Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Red Hat Putting Digital Transformation into Practice seminar series. My name is Jason Lamb. I'm a cloud solutions strategist for Intel, and the presentation that I have for you for the next 30 minutes is going to touch on a number of key transformative events in terms of the data center infrastructure in today's modern organizations. I want to focus on the impact of societal digital transformation, as well as the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic quarantine as well, and try to see if I can draw some parallels between both events and how they're affecting how customers, C-level CIOs, IT architects are formulating their data center transformation plans. But before we get started, I want to mention that I understand that digital transformation is a very overused term in our industry. I'm kind of a student of digital transformation here at Intel, and I realize that even though it's mentioned quite often in the technology industry, it is actually not a buzzword. It is actually a real event. The fact that digital transformation is responsible for such disruption in businesses all around the world is sort of evidence of that. And so I'd like to kind of reframe this discussion and reset around the subject of what digital transformation really is and what the important characteristics of it are for people designing these next generation data centers. So if you'll bear with me for the next 30 minutes, I'd like to sort of reset this conversation. So from my perspective, digital transformation actually more aptly applies to a societal transformation. It's what happens in society through the extended use or continued use of digital technology. That can be sort of simply described as the technology that allows us to take analog data and convert it into digital form. But the more that we use digital technology, the more it transforms how we work in society, how we connect to each other in society, and everything else. As a matter of fact, this era of societal transformation is comparable to past societal transformation. If you think about the Industrial Revolution, as historians have written about it, or the switch from manual farming to animal-aided farming, these were all significant events in human history. And when we look back on this era, this kind of the last half of last century moving forward will be recognized as a significant moment in human history as well, one in where our society kind of digitally transformed. And by the way, in thinking about this in comparison to other transformations, the remarkable thing about the digital transformation is that once the infrastructure is put in place, once the digital infrastructure is put in place, then the infrastructures inside of those digital infrastructures can be moved and set up very rapidly. That's very different from past technological change. For example, in the Industrial Revolution, we needed to have factories built, we needed to have infrastructure for the factories built, and that took a significant amount of time. So the real thing to be wary about in this transformative era is time. The fact that we have much, much less of it as we need to make our decisions going forward for how we're going to position ourselves. So in terms of digital technology and societal transformation or digital transformation, it really works that as we use more and more digital technology, our society is digitally transformed. We are presented with new ways of working, but at the same time, the old ways of working are made obsolete. The other thing that's very important to understand about these societal transformations is it's undeniable and unavoidable. So no one can kind of opt out of the impacts of digital transformation. And lastly, a point I'd like to make is that digital transformation as a societal function affects every company, every organization. Companies like Intel that I work for must respond to the impacts of digital transformation from a societal perspective, right? We're changing the relationship we have with our customers through the use of this digital technology. You're seeing it happen all over the place. In order to adapt to these societal changes, we have to change how we work. That's the key aspect. And finally, from a business perspective and from a leadership perspective, in terms of how we are charting our course through this era, the businesses and organizations' top priority is to not to develop, not to digitally transform, because that's a very vague, unspecific, non-specific kind of response. What we need to do is we need to develop a digital transformation strategy for our organization and businesses to initially perhaps maybe survive, but eventually thrive in this new era. And you see examples of companies doing this, quite all over the place, as much as we see examples of companies that are not adapting. And I'd kind of like to talk about that a little bit now. But first, I'd like to kind of go back in time to a different era of infrastructure transformation and sort of draw some parallels to today. In 1872, post the Civil War, actually, in the United States, we continued this project of building a rail infrastructure and then later a postal infrastructure to connect the country together, to bring the country kind of closer together. But there were enterprising individuals such as Aaron Montgomery Ward in 1872, a traveling salesman, who recognized that these technologies, this new infrastructure, could be used for a new kind of business. Seeing that the local rural customer wasn't really well satisfied with their local general store, a limited amount of shelf space, a limited selection of products, Aaron Montgomery Ward came up with this idea of developing a mail order catalog in the United States' first mail order business to allow customers to have access to a much wider range of products. The only stipulation for the customer was they had to wait for it to be delivered. That was the trade-off for this mail order business. It became so successful that the catalog was actually burned in effigy by the local store owners. So this was sort of one of those eras in where the business that existed were resisting the change. But however, other folks started to realize the value in this kind of business model. Richard Warren Sears joined Montgomery Ward in 1886 with his Sears and Roebuck Company for a second very popular mail order business. And then around the turn of the century, a gentleman by the name of John Cash Penny realized that the population density in these areas was such that they could support an actual retail outlet, thereby actually improving upon the model that Aaron Ward and Richard Sears had done. Because what they could do is customers could order from a longer list of products, but then get it right away. So this was the key for the success of the early JCPenney stores. They were reducing time to value for the customer. And of course, Montgomery Ward and Sears had to follow suit. Matter of fact, those three retail institutions were sort of pillars of the American business community for many, 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 many years, having successfully navigated societal transformation early in the late 1800s, early 1900s. However, fast forward 100 years, and what we find is that with the next societal transformation, companies such as Montgomery Ward, JCPenney, and Sears didn't actually make the cut, weren't able to actually transform their business model. And what we saw was a wholesale shift in the retail infrastructure in the United States, moving away from the traditional brick and mortar model to a new model, a digitally transformed model. And we're still living in this age of digital disruption, right? Innosight produces a white paper on a periodic basis where they track the life, among other things, they track the lifespan of companies on the S&P 500. And it's shrinking, and it's been shrinking. And as a matter of fact, at this current churn rate, they're predicting that half of the companies on the S&P 500 will be replaced over the next 10 years. And if you go, by the way, to their website or you read the paper, they actually show you the companies that have fallen off the S&P 500 and the new ones that have come on just in recent times. As a matter of fact, they point out that retailers were especially hit hard, as I was just mentioning. But there's also strong signs of digital disruption to a number of other industries as we go forward. As a matter of fact, as I mentioned, societal digital transformation is going to affect every business. So we all have to come up with a strategy for how we're going to move forward into this new era. And the folks in Innosight actually conclude with, it points to the need for companies to embrace a dual transformation to focus on changing customer needs and other strategic interventions. That's, again, a little non-specific for me. What I would suggest is that a digital transformation strategy is one in where you focus on the customer. So let me tell you one additional story of a digital transformation story that's kind of broken into two parts for a company called Tower Records. The documentary that I've listed down there is a very good documentary that kind of gives you, if you're a fan, by the way, of just the music industry in general, it's a great documentary. But it's also a very good documentary if you're looking at it with an eye toward digital transformation as to see the effects on a particular business from the inside. So they were founded in 1960. They established a very successful brick and mortar business for initially vinyl record album sales and vinyl single sales, and then moving in through cassette and other types of technology. They were actually one of the pioneers of using digital technology within the company to improve the efficiency of the company. So for example, they were one of the first companies to employ electronic credit card processing machines in the late 90s so that you could get your transaction done quicker. So in a sense, that digital transformation effect within the business actually helped customers because it improved their shopping experience by decreasing the amount of time it took them to do a transaction. They were also positioned very well to take advantage of the digitized compact disc format. A lot of customers were replacing their old vinyl records with CDs and also adding to their CD libraries. So they were right at the right part with the right brick and mortar infrastructure and the right technology to really take advantage. And as a matter of fact, by the end of the last century, their store sales surpassed $1 billion US. However, even at that point, they were out of position to respond to the continued digitization of music media. They miscalculated the customer effect, actually the whole industry did, of removing CD single sales and forcing customers to buy the entire CD. So this was kind of a perfect storm that was brewing that's described very well in the documentary. They believed also that they could control their customers' use of new technology. This is a very important lesson for companies, right? Thinking that you can control your customers' use of an adoption of technology, that it'll happen at your pace, not at the pace that's actually happening in society, which was a miscalculation on the part of the tower folks. And they didn't understand the impact of the early file sharing technologies, right? They simply saw it as customers stealing music rather than this might be a way in which customers would want to consume music going forward. Of course, a company that recognized that is a kind of a company leading in this kind of digital transformation era, of course, Apple, right? And their model. 5 years later, in 2004, they filed for bankruptcy. So this is a really important story about the impact of digital transformation. You need to be able to make the right digital transformation strategy in line with what your customers' expectations and your customers' requirements are. As a matter of fact, I would define a digital transformation strategy of consisting of digital technology, which is kind of goes without saying, but it's also a transformational solution to your business. It changes the way you do business. And then finally, the key effect is it reduces time to value to your customer. You can really simplify digital transformation strategies down to that. In the case of Amazon, they just simply reduce the time it takes for customers to get stuff, right? And they utilize a number of different technologies in order to do that, but that's the actual effect. And they keep going back to that again and again and again with tremendous success. But I'll give you another example of a successful digital transformation strategy broken down this way. Okay, in terms of new technology, the internet connected media players, and then for the ordering of the media, a cloud with back-end cloud native applications. The customer's effect of the transformational solution is the customers get their movie, media, TV content delivered immediately to their home, right, to their devices. And in this instance, the company reinvents itself, right? They transform their own business. And of course, the reduced time to value of the customer is clear. And of course, in this example, it's Netflix. So what Netflix was able to deploy a digital transformation strategy that in effect killed their current business, but allowed them to move forward into this digital age in a much stronger, much more powerful way. For those of you that have the memory of the Blockbuster Video or the Hollywood Video chains that Netflix was originally competing with, I don't remember any of them being nominated for Oscars for documentaries and so on and so forth. So Netflix has really transformed their business and continues to go back to that particular well again and again and again. So in terms of the data center transformation process, as a result of digital transformation pressures that companies are experiencing, it follows a fairly linear path. We need to determine what those digital transformation pressures are, then design digital transformation strategies, then design a data center infrastructure that can enable those digital transformation strategies, and then implement it. And the key challenge that I think we have in the industry is making sure that that process is synchronized. You can talk about doing digital transformation for saving IT costs, but you're not connecting that to the digital transformation pressures that the business is experiencing. That's, in a sense, that's kind of one piece of it, right? Cost efficiencies are always going to be one piece of it. But connecting it to the digital transformation pressures that a company are experiencing is a very, very key important part of this process that's oftentimes left out or overlooked, right? It means talking to the business unit line owners, business line owners, the C-levels responsible for the direction of the business. I'm sure that when the Netflix folks approached the management team, they had to actually get the CEO to buy in on that digital transformation strategy that I referred to. Dion Hinchcliffe is one of the thought leaders in this particular digital transformation space, and he's been publishing a lot on his particular blog and also ZD publications, ZD Communications publications on this subject. And back in 2015, he described this model of moving from inefficient hierarchies, in this example, he's sort of using the IT administration hierarchy, and changing it to a model where there's more robust connections, powerful connections, multiple connections between different groups. And as a matter of fact, this is kind of in line with the whole DevOps movement, in where the infrastructure operation folks and the developers are much more tightly integrated within the company. And again, for those of you that have memory, it wasn't that long ago that the infrastructure operation folks were your employees, and the devs were the employees of the software company that you bought the software from. That's how separated things are or were. Now it's the success, the reduction in speed and time to respond is enabled by the fact that you bring in-house developers and team them up with infrastructure operation folks in order to carry out very collaborative, very powerful enablement of software solutions. And it's a radically different model than one that we're used to. And it relies on infrastructure automation. That's the key: infrastructure automation and orchestration. And so in terms of data center transformation, we've seen this continual shift in the industry going from bare metal to virtualized to cloud, both public and private. And that appears to be the way forward, because it is the cloud infrastructure that features fully software defined, which in other words decreases the time for administration and orchestration, and allows applications direct control over the infrastructure. As a matter of fact, Flexera, which is a cloud management provider, cloud management software provider, does a yearly survey, and their respondents say that multi-cloud is the preferred strategy, and that on average, organizations have about 5 clouds, a mix of both public and private. So as we transition from our old architectures to our new architectures, it certainly seems to suggest that eventually we're going to have a model where all infrastructures, both private, on-prem, as well as public, are going to be cloud compute infrastructures. We're going to need to upgrade the on-prem piece in particular to a private cloud. IT architects will choose a set of clouds for their data center infrastructure. They're doing that already. And not all data center clouds will be public clouds. In fact, the key cloud in a multi-cloud architecture is the private cloud. That's the one we're going to use to manage our other public cloud resources going forward. And in order to do that, we need to have a unified multi-cloud management capability, which are starting to appear now in different forms and phases. But then all of a sudden, we're quarantined. We can't get to the data centers anymore. We have a kind of a societal changing event in this pandemic, this viral pandemic. And so the question is as we quarantine folks, and in particular, as we pushed people home and we needed them still to connect in, where were we going to stand up these brand new workloads that we needed, these brand new workloads for virtual desktop or teleworker? Well, the answer was pretty clear at the initial outset. The only way we could get infrastructure stood up were in these fully software-defined infrastructures, which predominantly were public cloud. So we saw a kind of push initially after the pandemic and quarantine hit to quickly stand up things like VDI workloads in public cloud. But the interesting thing was, it wasn't necessarily going to be a VDI workload provided by the public cloud provider. Most of them, by the way, have their own VDI solution. It was workloads that could be moved, VDI workloads that could be moved. In other words, independent from the public cloud. So this sort of suggests that as we move forward and as we're able to access our data centers again, that we build on-premise infrastructure or private cloud infrastructure that would allow us to repatriate these workloads from the previous public cloud to more cost-efficient infrastructures going forward. So it'll be very interesting to see how we respond to this. But the other thing that it's really greatly illuminated is how the requirements on our modern data centers have changed. The fact that we need to be able to respond much, much faster. You know, the reality is that when we have a situation where all of a sudden we have to have massive access to things like unemployment insurance websites, running those on older architectures, in some cases mainframe architectures where we don't have access to the programmers anymore or that expertise anymore, has created a tremendous challenge in our society. As a matter of fact, Ian Davis wrote this piece, which by the way was not written in 2009, even though I grabbed the screenshot from the website. This was actually written post-COVID. Talks about it's increasingly clear that this is fundamentally different what we're going through. Some companies are focused on just near-term survival. That's their only agenda. But others are sort of looking through the fog and trying to figure out what's this new normal going to look like. And the one thing we know is it's not going to look like the old normal. We've got to come up with something new. We've got to come up with something that's more scalable. In other words, we've got to sort of complete this process of digital transformation of our, or digital transformation strategy, transformation of our data centers. We've got to finish that. If anything, what we've gone through just recently really indicates the need for us to develop solutions that are much more exponentially scalable than what we had previously. So executives that are preparing for the future have to prepare their organizations to succeed in this new normal. They have to focus on what's changed, right? What remains the same for their customers, companies, and for their industries. What's changed may be an opportunity for that transformative cloud native application and solution. What's the same may be an opportunity for us to sort of build back up infrastructure and capacity going forward. But the key through this is technology is going to remain the most important element going forward. And in Dion Hinchcliffe's most recent piece from his blog, he talks about a very similar thing, that there's no denying that how we've worked before is simply gone. And in some ways, it's kind of a new thing, right? What we need to design going forward is something that is going to be much more capable of handling these large-scale changes in our global society, because it's irresponsible to go back to anything that's less. So on Dion's piece, he puts this nice graphic up that I thought was interesting, where he talks about, again, accelerating this move to from a hierarchical to more networked organization. He uses that term quite a bit, and I think it's quite effective in terms of describing what the goal that we should be shooting for. The other thing that we need to kind of really internalize is that we need to go from design for control to design for loss of control. That's the way in which these crowdsourcing or viral types of events take place. We need to put those into our organizations and really capitalize on them. There's going to be a need for mass decentralized automation, things like AI enablement, using digital communities and social networks as our primary organizational structures. And then finally, a continuation of this agile development model being sort of penetrated throughout the organization, where we team up teams together and allow them to connect. This is what's really going to deliver very powerful value to our organizations in the future, right? So we need to be positioning ourselves for this kind of future right now. And Red Hat is an example of a company that gets this in a very, very big way. A lot of Red Hat solutions, their commitment to open source, which is another way in which you speed access to these types of solutions, are just hallmarks of companies that are focused on helping customers bridge this divide. And nothing could be more emblematic of that than their Red Hat Customer Engagement Hub. And I just want to call out one sentence here on their webpage. At the heart of these efforts is the modern Customer Engagement Hub, which uses decisioning and integrated artificial intelligence models to react to events in real time, fine-tuning each customer experience for every interaction with the business. That's the model, that's the scale that we have to get on. And Red Hat recognizes that in a very, very powerful way. So as we evolve our data center infrastructure, irrespective of these kind of global kind of events like these viral pandemics, we're moving from a model in where less and less is being managed by the human administrative element, and more is being managed by the platform or the solution or the software. Platform as a service is this containerized model where the application is responsible for managing all of the underlying infrastructure, network, or compute, network, and storage. As a matter of fact, this containerized cloud native world that we move into is significant. I don't know how many of you have had a chance to visit the CNCF website, but this is their landscape diagram, right? And the icons are small for a very specific reason. Trying to get it all on one page is a challenge. Every single company that is part of your IT solution today are engaged in this cloud native development effort going forward. And so the question is where are you in terms of developing your cloud native solutions for your organization? In terms of partnerships, you can't lack for a more powerful partner than Intel and Red Hat. Deutsche Bank, who features at the Red Hat Summits very often, will talk about how the fact that they manage tens of thousands of containers across their infrastructure today, and the effect that they've had of implementing this type of cloud native environment, a platform as a service, is that they can go from application development time from 6 to 9 months to 2 to 3 weeks. So once we all sort of internalize and understand that, we realize where we need to go. Now, there's one other aspect to this cloud native development that's not mentioned, at least in the paragraph that I pulled out of their customer success story. And that is what Deutsche Bank now also positions themselves for is exponential scale. This model can scale much, much differently than the old model that required lots of human intervention. And that's really the positioning that they've done. And all companies that have followed this sort of path, and there are many, many, have done going forward. So in terms of CNCF members, both Intel and Red Hat are platinum. Matter of fact, Intel was a founding member of the CNCF along with Google. Intel is also a founding member of the Open Container Initiative, for those of you who understand kind of the importance of having open containers in the containerized development model, and a platinum member of the OpenStack Foundation. Because Intel recognizes that Red Hat and the open source movement are going to be the key enablers for our future, for a future in where we scale technology that exists in the infrastructure, like on the Intel side, compute, memory, storage, and network. All the innovative solutions that Intel is bringing to the market in each one of these particular areas, Intel brings them to the development community in a way in which it can be optimized for these containerized modern cloud native workloads. So it's not just the fact that Intel develops Kubernetes projects that can recognize Intel technology in the cluster and then provide easy access, orchestrated access to those resources. But it's also that Intel has a history of developing software projects and then pushing them out into the open source world. So prior to Kubernetes, Intel had a track record of making development libraries like the Storage Plane Development Kit, SPDK, the Data Plane Development Kit, DPDK, and the Cache Acceleration, Open Cache Acceleration Library, all Intel original projects that then get pushed out to public source governance. But in the case of the Kubernetes world, Kata containers began life as the Intel Clear Linux, Clear Containers project. And Intel engineers still contribute to these open source projects going forward. But Intel sort of generates the initial push here to contribute to this open source cloud native world. So this is the kind of future that we're looking at. We're looking at a cloud native world that, by the way, doesn't just end with platform as a service. It moves to container as a service, and then eventually to serverless. So it's all about making these infrastructures more exponentially scalable, keeping in line with a new normal envisioned by folks like Dion Hinchcliffe, envisioned folks like Ian Davis. A new normal for the data center means a new normal for our businesses and organization, means a new normal for our world kind of going forward. And so at the end of the day, the thing that I would sort of share with you is that it's very, very important to connect your data center transformation to your digital transformation strategies. Understand what the organization's digital transformation pressures are, and realize that we've got to build an infrastructure, a data center infrastructure that can respond in kind and scale to those digital transformation pressures. Many organizations that are in the retail space today, if an online retailer has all of a sudden an idea for a brand new sale starting a Cyber Monday or a Cyber Wednesday, these other online retailers have to have an infrastructure that can respond in kind, right? So it's important to understand what those digital transformation strategies are. Where are they being developed and why within your organization? What's each digital transformation strategy goal to deliver reduced time to value for your customers? That's how you can oftentimes net this out. And then in terms of the COVID pandemic, what's changed and what's the same for your customers, your companies, and your industry? It's really important to kind of map that out, because this may be the perfect time for those things that are offline for your company to look at a cloud native, modernized, transformative solution for that particular part of your business. Where are the opportunities that exist? Where can you take advantage of them going forward? And then finally, reach out to your Red Hat cloud consultants. Get them involved in these projects with you. Ask them, what are the architectures and capabilities and limitations for your on-premise infrastructure? What are the capabilities that are available in public clouds that you can leverage as an organization? And which are the capabilities in the public cloud that you need to be, sort of careful about, because they may lock you into a public cloud solution that might not be the most advantageous for your business going forward. utilize those Red Hat Cloud consultants to advise you as your path going forward. It's important to understand how the multi-cloud architecture will be something that you take advantage of within your own organization. You're going to need to design a multi-cloud architecture that's designed to support uniform cloud management, uniform application development, cost management, and performance optimization. These are all going to be important factors. So reach out to your Red Hat Cloud consultants to understand what's possible with tools such as Ansible, Red Hat Ansible, Red Hat Satellite, and Red Hat CloudForm. Because at the end of the day, all your cloud infrastructures will need to be able to be responding in a way that delivers value to your business, to your organization, to your digital transformation requirements. And that's the way forward. So I'd like to thank you all for attending this session with me and realize that Intel and Red Hat are committed to your success going forward. We're committed to your data center transformation going forward and to responding to this era's most challenging event, certainly in our lifetime, this societal digital transformation. So thank you very much.